Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Made You Book. My name's Gretchen and today I'm going to talk about my most recent read, which was The Vaster Wilds by Lauren Groff. So this book was on my goal books, it was one of my goal books to read for the end of the year. And it was also the November book club pick for Eric Carl Anderson's Patreon book club. So although I'm a little late to the party, I did finish it and I am very glad that I did. So this book follows our narrator. She is a young woman and we come to learn that she is in what we're led to believe is the Jamestown settlement in America. I don't think that we're given the exact date, but it's sometime in the 1600s, I would venture. So we have this narrator and we learn that she is running, she is fleeing, and it happens very early on, so I don't think that it's that much of a spoiler to say that she definitely committed a crime in her little village, and she is fleeing and trying to escape the people that are looking for her to hold her accountable for the crime that she committed. So we kind of follow her through her journey of escape, but as we're learning about her escape, we're also getting kind of flashbacks to her and her life back at home in England, as well as her life and what happened and what events occurred while she was actually on the ship heading to America. So this book I thought was really good. This is actually my first Lauren Groff book, so I don't have anything of hers to compare this to, but the writing, oh my goodness, she is such a talented writer. The writing was very, it just flowed so well. It was very, I hate saying the word flowery, but it was quite poetic. It wasn't pretentious though. It was very accessible, and I just loved the way that Groff was able to capture the intensity of her situation. And there were parts of this book that were very propulsive and went very fast. Those parts where she was actively fleeing and, on the hunt or trying to escape from something. But there were times when Groff was able to appropriately slow the pace of the story, where she was fishing or she was foraging or, building a shelter. And during those times, the character or the narrator was able to take some time to rest and evaluate and ponder her thoughts. So I think that the pacing of this novel was really done well. And even though, like I said, there were slower parts, it was still enough to get me to want to keep turning the page because it was so intriguing, and the writing was just so lovely that I just wanted to continue to immerse myself in it. And one of the other things I really enjoyed about this book was it had a lot to say. There were some very strong themes. First and foremost, we had survival. So we have this young woman, she commits this crime and she flees with the few things that she was able to grab and run away with. And now she is in the great unknown. Like, not only is she out in the open on her own, but keep in mind, this being back in the 1600s with very few places settled at that point in time, she was literally running into nothing. Nothing that would have that she would have been familiar with. Obviously, there were indigenous tribes that were in the area, so she was, you know, running into and having encounters with them, but those were all unknown to her. And she, you know, she was obviously scared because she was not familiar with them and she was fearful for her life. Now, that being said, one of the other things that I think this book did very well is it touched on colonialism and how the British came over to America and started their settlements and basically, you know, forcibly started to take land from the natives. And I think that it was done in taste. And also, although I found this to be a little far-fetched at times, it also kind of alludes to a future of the repercussions that happen from us coming in and taking over indigenous land, and how we basically stripped the earth and the impact that that will have in the future, even in our present day times. So I think that I found that interesting, but I will say I did think that it was a little kind of a far stretch for the character, the main character, to ponder those things or reflect on something that would eventually happen, as we know, in our future, but for her to have the foresight of that in her day and age when, you know, she didn't really know much about the land. She didn't know much about the indigenous people there. She didn't know of all of the horrific things that her people coming into America would bring, like famine, diseases, you know, savagery against the indigenous people. But I mean, I did like the way that Groff handled that, but I did find it a little, you know, like I said, just kind of a far-fetched assumption that she would have the foresight to ponder all of those things. But, you know, I digress. So one of the other things that was really evident in this book that Groff focused on was the power of love and connection, and the lengths that we will go to when those things are threatened, and what we're capable of doing when we're challenged in those areas. And I think that she also explores what man in general is capable of. There's a lot in here that is absolutely tragic for the way that men treat women back in this day and age, and how that gender dynamic is depicted. There are several scenes within this book that are absolutely gut-wrenching, and knowing fully that this was how women were treated and how they were valued back then, and it's horrific. So knowing that, I think that Groff handled it very well to kind of paint that picture of men being savages toward other men, but also toward women. And it was just a very thought-provoking book. It gave me a lot to think about, and it was just a very beautifully lyrical story that kind of kept me going, and I'm really glad that I took the time to read this. This was on my radar regardless of it being in Eric's book club, but I was so glad to see that it was the choice for November because it forced me to pick it up sooner. I worry that if it hadn't been chosen, that this would be a book that I read further into next year. And I'm really glad that I read it sooner because now I'm curious about Groff's backlist. So I have a few of her books that I just haven't had a chance to read, this being my first one. I think I have Matrix, and I think I have, what's the other one called? Is it Fates and Furies maybe that I have? So I'm curious if you guys recommend, if you're fans of Lauren Groff, which one I should pick up next and which one of hers I should prioritize. I am getting through my end of year list slowly but surely, and I was so excited to be able to check another one off. I do have a video coming soon with my top reads for 2023, and I'm also going to try to do a video about my most anticipated books that are coming out early next year to kind of get us all excited about and waiting for new books to come out that we're all excited about. So until then, I will see you next time. Bye, everyone.